Right, it's a very wet and windy day today. I think it's storm, God knows what. So I think in the last one we showed, I cut out the rusty bits. So I've just welded in a new outrigger on this side, made a little repair up the front there. Just come along the back and I just spot weld that to the floor. And then obviously the gaps can be seam sealed afterwards. It's very thin, that floor. That's literally the skin of the floor where your carpet sits in there. So if you start trying to weld that all the way along, it ends up just blowing through and melting your carpet and stuff. So we've got the same this side. Cut the same piece of steel out for the outrigger. Again, round the back, spot welded to the floor. At this side we just had to make a few more repairs a bit further up into the wheel arch, and then right up here where we had all those holes, and I just had to tack a piece on the end of there also. So the main thing is that's got all that sealed now, stop the crap and the mud going inside and rotting all that inside steelwork, which is the main aim. So I'm not going to do any seam sealing stuff yet because I still want to strip the rest of the car, but I will just cover that in some zinc primer just to stop it going rusty, and that's that job ticked off. Right, so we finished up with that welding for a minute, so next job is to get this front subframe off. Can drop this all complete with the front legs and all, but I'm going to have to rebuild all that anyway, so just because it's easier to take that apart on the car, we'll pull the two front legs off and then drop the subframe afterwards. Or at least that's the plan. Right, it's got the subframe dropped out. I've just dropped that complete. I'll get all this cleaned up. These ball joints are all sweet because obviously they're all pretty new, and it all just wants cleaning up and refreshing really. Just sitting around is just the worst thing you can do for cars. Should have done that really before I did this welding because it would have made this job a lot easier. I'm just about to see I did just weld a patch in up there as well. I just dug all the underseal out just to investigate up there because it was a bit of surface rust going on there, but it's still sound. So I'll move to the back now. Just remembered I think there's still diesel in the tank, so I'm going to drop those two lines down a minute, and luckily the lift pump is right here, so we can just put a jump pack on the fuel pump and just pump it out. Right, so we're just pumping the fuel out now. Hopefully it'll go into two of them, or else we're going to have to start finding gallons. Right, okay, hopefully as you just saw, I've dropped the fuel tank and the axle out now. I've done that really just so I can get up underneath it, check all the rust situation up here. I also want to replace obviously the brake lines that are sort of obstructed by the tank, and it's a lot easier with the tank out. So you're pretty much back to a bare shell here now. We'll just get this fuel filling neck out so we can get up there a bit better, and then we can start cleaning all this up as well, rip those fuel lines off. We can paint over all the repairs then and stuff, and then we can just underseal the whole car in wheel arches and everything, so we're back to a good starting point again, hopefully. Right, so now that we've got the subframe dropped off the car, it gives us better access to these two other bits of welding that I mentioned. So we've got this outer skin here that's sort of sandwiched between the subframe and the rest of the car, and they're quite common to rot out well, on the end here, and it kind of works its way along. So you can see I've just cut a section out there, so we'll weld a new piece in there. And then the same on this side, not quite so bad though, just a small section over there. So we'll get some plate welded in there and covered up again. This bit here is a little bit pitted, but it isn't too bad, so I think we'll just put some converter on that and paint over it and underseal it, and that'll be good for years to come, hopefully. So as is often the case when you get involved with jobs like this, the more you clean back, the more issues you find. So I thought I was nearly there. So I was having one final clean up with the needle gun and the wire brush and found some more areas that I wasn't happy with. So I've just been making a few more repairs this morning. One was this rear jacking point has gone really thin in one place. So I've just welded an extra plate in there to seal that in. And then I was up in the driver's side wheel arch clearing around this little bracket here for the brake line. And there was a sort of a hole in there. So we've welded a patch in there. But then the worst bit was, it was kind of hidden because I had the car obviously on the four-post and the front jacking point is here. And it was kind of covering this up. So I noticed from the inside, I could see some sort of pinholes in that inner frame rail, or that inner sill, should I say. And from experience, when that happens, it always happens from the inside out. So I've exposed it, cut the sill out, and sure enough, that inside piece of the sill is completely rotted out. The water basically gets in there, there's holes that hold the side skirts and stuff on, and it compromises it generally. I think the cars with the side skirts always seem to suffer a lot worse than the ones that didn't. And once the water gets in there, it can't get out, so it sits in that sort of seam along the bottom and then rots out from the inside out. And the first sign you normally see is around the jacking points, only because that gets pushed around and you've got a couple of extra layers there and the water gets down. So you've just got lots of different layers of steel here sandwiched on top of each other, and it kind of gets in between and then just rusts. And the only way you can really fix it is, because to be fair, the outer sill actually was, as you can see, it's pretty solid here, to be honest. It was just, there's a bit of surface rust here where the water bit is sitting, but otherwise you could knock that with a hammer and there wasn't really any problems. But the in one's gone, and the only way you can get to that really and do a proper job is to cut that out. So we'll build the inner sill first, so a piece of angle or two pieces of flat in there. Then we'll put a second skin on to tie in with this inner piece here. Drill some holes in it so we can plug weld onto that. This here is an extra thick piece of steel that runs right up through, so that's where your jacking point is. So we'll tie into that, and then lastly put the outer sill back on the top of it again. So yeah, I think I'm fairly confident in saying that that is the last piece of welding that needs doing. Then we can finally crack on with some painting and undersealing, and hopefully then get the bottom of the car dealt with. So I've made a repair to that inner sill now, so we just cut a piece of steel out, welded it in around, plug welded it to that thick jacking point. And we've also just put a piece in on the top where it had rotted out, so that's all solid now. So it's just a case of rebuilding the outer sill, welding that in solid, and then that's good to go again. Right, so that's the last of the welding, hopefully. Plated in the sill. So I haven't taken too much time making it completely flush, because obviously this is completely covered over by the side skirt anyway, so you can't see any of this. But I'll get this all painted when I do the underside, and then at least it's all solid and protected for into the future. So we are now finally ready to, I've just got a few other bits to strip out the way, like this wiring loom, my clutch assembly up there, because I want to get all paint underneath there, probably take that header tank out as well. Basically just all the crap that's in the way of getting to the bare metal work. And then I'll be able to start painting up. I think the plan is I'm going to do all the wheel arches with Pour 15 and the engine bay, and then just anywhere where I've done any welding, so any repair sections or any rusty bits. And then once all those areas are protected, I'll just underseal the whole underside and the arches again, just to give it the best chance possible going into the future. So just as a recap, obviously we've done the in and outer sill on this side here. Done the outriggers both sides up into the arches, little repair up there. The outrigger the same this side. I've got patches on the subframe mount, patch on the subframe mount, and also up a bit further on that side. And I did have to make a repair to that jacking point as well. So quite a few patches overall, to be fair, more than I was thinking. It's quite surprising when you start digging around and actually revealing the metalwork. It's surprising how much is starting to rot behind it now. So I think it is definitely worth, if you've got a 306 and you've got a bit of spare time, it's probably worth now getting underneath it and whipping a couple of the splash guards out and just having a dig around with a screwdriver. Most of the things that we've repaired here, apart from those outriggers, were basically invisible. You couldn't see there was anything wrong. It's only really from experience and poking with a screwdriver in the common places where I knew where it could have a problem. Right, we're just hiding away in here. We seem to be having yet another storm. I'm just clomping my way around the workshop. I can't help but notice in all these videos I've been editing the amount of noise from my feet just walking around on the floor. No idea why, but my walking clearly seems to be very noisy on camera. Anyway, you can see I've gone over everything now with 2 coats of 415, or at least all the bare metal, wheel arches, any repairs and stuff like that. Obviously we've got that repair on the sill that we did also, but all the lower half of the engine bay we've covered over. Both the front wheel arches, obviously all the subframe and stuff that we repaired underneath, or should I say the outriggers there and the subframe mounts. And then right along the inner and outer seals, and then obviously the 2 rear wheel arches also. And I've gone over, you can't see very good here, the light's shining, but so we've done all the areas under here that we wire wheeled back, and I've just done it everywhere at the back. It's a bit more exposed back there, and we've just done all the seams up around the fuel tank and all these little brackets and things around the handbrake cables, and obviously the back side of those repairs on the front. To be honest, I went into this knowing that we had a couple issues with those outriggers, but it kind of escalated as per every project quite drastically. But it's one of those jobs where if you don't do it now, you never will, because obviously getting to all these areas when the car's put together is impossible. So while you got it half apart, you just as well take it completely apart, clean it up, find all the problems. So like I mentioned before, a lot of these repairs you honestly wouldn't have even known were a problem until you get it apart and actually start digging around with the screwdriver and a wire wheel and needle gun, etc. And you start finding all these extra places where the rust has got in behind the underseal or the paint's peeling back. So at least now everything is good, it's all solid. We've repaired all the problems and we can start bolting stuff back together now, knowing that the car is all good. So this has been sat here for a couple of days now, just letting this cure. And the final stage now is to apply some underseal, just as an added layer of protection. I'm going to put some thicker stone chip stuff in the 4 wheel arches first, let that sort of set up, and then we're just going to go the whole underside with some underseal. And that will luckily conclude this somewhat boring phase of the build, which isn't really very enjoyable. However, once it's done, you do feel a lot better about it, knowing that you fixed any issues and hopefully protected it well enough to prevent any issues going forwards. So a lot of this has probably been made worse, or certainly hasn't been helped by it just sitting around outside for years, and especially in the climate down here when we get a lot of sort of misty rain and wind, and the moisture just gets everywhere. So that hasn't helped it. So now that we've done all this to it again, it would be a shame to let it go backwards, so I'm going to try and keep it indoors where possible, or at least certainly during the winter anyway. Right, so I'm going to get undersealing now. Probably won't film it, but if I do, you'll see that now. Probably be a fairly messy job, like doing anything under the car that involves paint, but we'll do our best not to cover me and hopefully cover the majority of the car. So that's everything undersealed front to back. Put that extra coat of stone guard on the arches and then undersealed over the top of it. So hopefully that's the last time I need to do anything under here for the foreseeable future.
Right, so that should hopefully be everything we need to do to the actual car itself, thank God. So obviously moving forwards, the next step will be starting to bolt everything back together on the back axle, the fuel tank, front subframe, suspension, and just slowly start putting everything that we've taken off back on again, obviously cleaning stuff up as we go, replacing anything that needs to be replaced. So hopefully the project will get a little bit more interesting from this point forwards. Probably the videos will slow down a bit because this has been happening over Christmas. So I hope everyone's had a good Christmas, obviously Happy New Year, which is now any day. So hopefully 2025 will be the year to get this car up and running again, hopefully back on the road and obviously making some power. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for all the comments on the previous videos. I quite enjoyed reading through and replying to lots of them. There's a lot of names there that I haven't seen for a long time, so that was really awesome. Anyway, cheers.